Welcome, Shelly, to the FTS podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So I brought on Shelly because I was introduced to her by a good friend, and she was telling me a little bit about what you do with Adam's Light. You're personally not in recovery yourself, but
Correct.
You have loved somebody who struggled with addiction themselves. So please tell me a little about that and Adam's Light and kind of what you do today.
So my brother Adam, we lost him September 19th of 2021 to fentanyl, overdose poisoning. There's, a whole back and forth about that. And it changed our family forever. Adam struggled for many years. He was about 31 when he got addicted. So he was later in life. He wasn't, young. He fought for many, many years. And then he was clean for about 6. He was 6 years clean, and then COVID happened. And like many people who struggle with mental health, about 2 weeks before he passed is when he had started using. And he had actually went for help, and he was turned away from a pretty prominent, well-known hospital. And I guess he bought the drugs, and it happened to be fentanyl. My mom found him. He lived with my mom in the basement, and my mom found him Sunday night, September 19th of 2021. And it was probably the worst. It was the worst night of my life. I've lost grandparents. I've lost my dad. But losing Adam in that capacity was the worst night. I think that as of, my 51 years of life that I've ever had. And it changed us forever. And I swore at his, we didn't have a funeral. We had a celebration of life.
Yeah.
That I was not going to stop saying his name. I was not going to stop telling his story. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then, we started Adam's Light, which is a nonprofit. And I had a good friend tell me, don't rewrite the story. Don't do something that everybody else is doing. Don't just start a nonprofit to do something. So I really had to think about what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like Adam never got the opportunity for a recovery. Like he never got that opportunity to have a support system. He had us. He had us as a family support system. But talking to anybody in recovery, you need more than that. Mm-hmm. You can have a good family. He had a roof over his head. He had food on his table. He had clothes on his back. He didn't have, he wasn't living on the streets. He had the support of his family, but he didn't have the support of people who've gone through what he's gone through.
So you didn't have that recovery community.
Right. And we didn't know anybody.
He wasn't involved in 12-step?
No, because he was never given that opportunity. We didn't know how to get him. This was new to us.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to get those steps. I remember he was suicidal 2 weeks before he died. And I said, let me take you to the emergency room. He's like, I'm not going to the I'm like, I will sit with you all night. I said, until we can get you help. He's like, no, they're not going to be able to help me. He wouldn't go. And I don't know if they would have been able to help him or just put him in a room and then sent him on his way. Even when he got out of jail, he had to go see a probation officer, and he was on, I can't remember if it was methadone or Suboxone. I think he was on both of them at some point in time.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to take it. He didn't like the way that it made him feel. But he would just go, they'd give him his medication. He got no therapy. He didn't get the mental health that he needed. And Adam, when things were good, things were good. But when things were bad, things were bad. He couldn't cope. When I get mad, I might throw something, I might yell at somebody, but I go to the gym and I can release it. I can get my anger out.
Yeah.
Adam couldn't cope when things were bad. And that's when he would turn to
substances,
and his drug of choice was heroin. He would smoke weed. I know my mom would get mad. I'm like, Mom, if that's the worst he's doing, let him smoke his pot. We've all done that back in the day. But the heroin was his drug of choice. And he did the needles. Mm-hmm. And when my mom found him, he still had the needle in his arm. So he didn't have a shot. He had 3 types of fentanyl. Whoever sold him whatever got him good. Because he didn't have a chance. My mom had Narcan in the house, and it wouldn't have revived him.
So I kind of want to go back and really see like the relationship you guys had together. So like, what was your relationship?
So I was the oldest. My sister is in the middle, Danielle, there's 3.5 years between me and my sister, and then Adam was youngest. So there was 8 years difference. So I was pretty much older. When I was, in high school, he was still in elementary school. So I grew up at a different time than he did. I grew up, my parents were still together. We had a functioning family. By the time he got to that middle school, I think it was like middle school, my sister was in high school, I was out, my parents divorced. And I think that really affected him.
Oh, yeah.
Can you blame that? No, because there's a lot of
Yeah,
families that go through divorce that the kids turn out fine. They don't turn to heroin. But it affected him. And
He was the youngest.
he was the youngest.
yeah.
Yes. So it was me, Danielle. So he had 2 older sisters. But so I've always felt very protective of him. Even up until, this happened, I was always very protective of Adam. Mm-hmm. We were close. We weren't close as in, best friends close. But he was my little brother, and I was always going to protect him. And I felt that he would be the same for me. If I needed something, he was always, Adam, can you, do this for me? Can you come over, take me somewhere? Or when I have to get dropped off to the airport, he would take me to the airport. So he was always there for that kind of stuff.
That's good, because I feel like sometimes with like an 8-year gap, sometimes it's like hard to.
Yeah, we had a cose family. I mean, we had our arguments.
Of course.
He was very hard-headed. Which all the men in that side of the family that grew up in the Shock household are hard-headed. So he was very hard-headed. I'm hard-headed. My mom's hard-headed. I think we're all hard-headed. And, we could fight. And I agree with everything that he did? No. But at the end of the day, I loved him, and he was my little brother.
Yeah.
I would do anything for him.
Had he always struggled with addiction and mental health?
Well, no, we didn't realize it until he was a paramedic. He was, or an EMT. Really? Yeah. So he was a volunteer firefighter. He was probably in his early 20s, maybe mid 20s, and he went out and fought the wildfires in California. So he loved it. That was an adrenaline rush for him. He was never home. He was always at the firehouse all through high school. When he was 16 up, he was always at the firehouse. So he went to school, got certificate after certificate, went to the Baltimore Fire Academy, Baltimore City Fire Academy. He graduated as an EMT, and he would be reviving addicts on the weekends.
That's what I was about to ask.
So he was stationed at St. Agnes Hospital down in Baltimore City. And I remember the stories he would tell us about, I revived another one. And it's crazy.
Especially in Baltimore.
He did a total 360, met a girl who introduced him to heroin, and it went down from there. And he, like I said, he was about 30 years old. He ended up getting fired from the city. And I think I wish things had played out differently, and I wish, looking back now, what we know now, we knew then, because I think he would have been able to get the help that he needed.
There is help out there, but sometimes.
But it just spiraled out of control, and then he started stealing. From my mom and my stepdad, and he lived with them, but would start stealing. My mom would start seeing missing things, and then all of a sudden, she's like, all her jewelry was missing one day. So she actually, trying to think of the exact timeline when she kicked him out. It was New Year's Day. The Ravens were playing. This is when the kids were little. My son, my nephew, and my niece. And every Sunday we would go over and watch the Ravens game. That was our tradition. Every Sunday we would all pile over and watch the Ravens game. And I'm pretty sure it was New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. I think it was New Year's Day. And we were in the basement. My parents had a big basement. And my brother's room was in the basement. And I said, is Adam home? My mom's like, no, I don't know where he is. I'm like, So I went in his room. And I know for many, many years he was mad at me for doing this. But I went snooping. And I opened up a drawer. And there you go. It was all right there. And I called my sister in. And she's like, what are we going to do? I said, it's time. We've got to. My mom would make a lot of excuses for him. And I can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing for my son. But we have 3 young kids who come over to this house, who play down here. We can't have this. Adam was an avid hunter. So he had knives. He had, hunting stuff. So I'm like, then I called my husband and my brother-in-law at the time in. We're like, we need, it's time. Went in, Mom showed her, and she just broke down.
Yeah.
And that was like our intervention. So I'll never forget that night. It was a Sunday night. And I remember it must have been New Year's Day, because I had to go to work the next day, because I ended up not going to work. I ended up calling out. And my brother-in-law and my husband took all the kids, and we called my uncle, and we waited for Adam and waited a couple hours. So he finally comes home, and we're all sitting in the living room. And
True intervention
we had a
style.
true intervention. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We had no idea what to say, what to do. And, we told him, you need to get help. Because we had to tell my Mom, we can't have our kids coming over here with heroin, and drugs. And what if he were to get angry and do something? He's got, knives and not that I don't think he ever would have, but when people have episodes, you don't know what they're capable of. We had the intervention, and he promised he was going to get help, and that kind
Did he receive it well?
no, not at all. He denied it.
Oh, he denied it being his, and
That's not what it is. And we're like, dude, it was all the paraphernalia of heroin. I'm like, Adam, we're not stupid. We weren't born yesterday.
But then at the end promised he would get help.
He said he would get help. So we tried to started the process, but again, we didn't know what to do. We didn't have anybody in that situation. We didn't know anybody who had gone through that. I mean, now it's a lot more common, but back then, I hate using that term back then, but back then, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to turn for help, who to go through for help. We thought he was getting the help.
You thought he was receiving it?
Yes. And that's when my mom ended up having to kick him out of the house because he was coming home and he wasn't fine. So my mom ended up kicking him out. And that's when she realized that he had stolen over $10,000 worth of stuff and hocked it. So she tried to go to a pawn shop, and she ended up filing charges against him. She felt that was the one way to get him help.
I see where you guys were going with that, because
Completely backfired.
It did. It can go either way.
Yeah. So he was arrested. There was a warrant out. He was arrested, and he went to jail. And I'll never forget, another core memory is the day we went to court. And the judge, he goes up in front of the judge, and it was dropped from a felony to a misdemeanor. But the judge, and I can't remember exactly, says, does anybody want to say anything on behalf of, Adam? And of course, my mom gets up there. And she just fell to her knees. So here we are in the middle of this courtroom, and my sister and I are in there. My mom's up there, in front of the judge, and just falls to her knees, begging and pleading. I don't know what to do. My son needs help. What do I do? And it was heartbreaking to see my mom so vulnerable, and it was a moment that will stick in my mind forever. So the judge said, well, we're going to get him help.
Okay.
Within 2 weeks, he's going to get that help that he needs. So we're thinking, what's he going to do? You're sending him to jail. How's he going to get the help that he needs? So we find out through the next couple of days that the state actually has a recovery house somewhere in this area. And it's state run for people in jail, I guess. I don't even know.
So so almost like the court ordered
jail. Yes. So we're like, okay. And I remember the judge saying within 2 weeks he should be there. We're like, okay. So he goes to jail for 2 weeks. 2 weeks comes and goes. And this was June. Went to jail. The 2 weeks came, and I remember going to visit him at the Towson jail. And it was something I don't ever want to experience again. And 2 weeks comes and go, 3 weeks, a month.
Is he still in jail?
He's still in jail. July, August,
Yeah.
September, October, still in jail. His birthday's in October, so now he spent the week of Thanksgiving, the week before Thanksgiving, he finds out that he's going to the recovery house.
The state-ran facility.
Mm-hmm. The Monday of Thanksgiving, he gets paroled. He never gets a chance to go. So what we are thinking was going to be 2 weeks has now been 6 months.
And then he never got the treatment.
He never even got the treatment. He got paroled. Then he had to go see a probation officer, and that's where he was on the Suboxone and the methadone, and he had to be on that. He was court ordered.
Really?
Yeah, so he had to do that. That was part of the probation, and he wanted to be weaned off of that.
It's not ideal to be on.
Right. He wasn't on it in jail. Why does he have to go, and it was, I guess, part of the process of making sure he doesn't go back, on drugs, I guess. I don't know.
But still, like, for example, say he wasn't using drugs in jail.
Right.
He's detoxed.
He's detoxed.
And then you're putting him on a substance just to wean him off.
Yes.
Which doesn't make sense.
It didn't make sense. And again, we were naive.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. You know, we're trusting the system that, looking back on, completely failed him, failed our family, and failed him. So he went through the probation, and that's when he was doing better. Like, he was doing good. I'll never forget, we had a trip to Disney, and I think that was in 17. So this might have been around 2016, 2017, because we had a trip. Now, when did we go to Disney? 21, 19. It might have been 2016, or 2013. See, it's all the times are running together. And we had a trip to Disney, and his doctor would not give him any to take. So we were actually in Disney, and he actually had a detox off of the Suboxone and spent like 2 days in bed because they wouldn't give it to him to travel.
Yeah.
And then he was fine. The following year, we went to a trip to Vermont, and he was doing well. Like, he was working. He got a job at BJ's. Wasn't a fabulous job, but he was working.
Yeah.
He was trying to pay off his debt to society because he had, racked up quite a lot of debt, as you know, or not as you know, but as you can imagine from being in jail, because you have to pay to be in jail. Which I never knew that either. Yeah, like you actually have to pay like a room and board. Yeah, I can't think of what it's called. It's crazy, but yeah, it's not just a freebie. So he had a lot of debt to pay off, plus credit cards and a truck that he had repoed while he was in there. So he was trying to make the best of everything, and he was doing well. Then COVID happened.
You said he was sober for 6 years.
About 6 years, yeah.
Was that around this time that you were talking about?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So, we were doing family vacations. He, got reintroduced to our kids. He was part of the family. I mean, he was still Adam. He was still a hardhead, but he was doing well. He was loved, taking pictures. He got into photography. That's what we were talking about before. He was doing photography. He was really into meditating. He was studying. He was reading. He was writing journals because we have his journals that he was writing. Like, he was doing well. He didn't have many friends. He didn't go out much, but he was what we thought was in recovery.
Yeah.
But he was never going into any meetings, which I've learned is a huge part of recovery. For people in recovery is the meetings. He didn't have that. That's the piece that he missed, was the being with other people in recovery to help him with those steps. He never got that.
Also with you guys, a lot of adults were involved in this whole situation. It blows my mind, but also at the same time doesn't surprise me that you guys didn't know how to go about dealing with somebody.
Yeah.
Or like being there for somebody who is struggling with addiction, or like what even is the first step in that?
No, because none of us had experienced it. I mean, you hear about it, you hear about people, and there was a stigma with it. And I always remember my mom telling Adam, because he was very embarrassed about it. And my mom was always like, Adam, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. We all have demons. I said, you just need to face it and tell people, yep, I was an addict, but I'm okay now. There's nothing wrong with it. And my mom was his number one fan. Like, she was his number one support.
Yeah.
She was there for him. She brought him into this world, and she took him out. That's what I always say. I said she was there, and she'll tell us. She's like, I'm glad I'm the one that found him, that I was able to be there when he left this world. But she was his number one fan, and we didn't know. Hindsight.
How do you think you would go about it now? Almost like, what would you say to a parent or a sibling that has somebody who's struggling with addiction?
The other thing I've learned too, though, the person who is in addiction needs to want to get better.
100%.
I have learned that as well. That if they don't want to get better, you can't help them. And that's what sucks, is you can't help them because they want to get better. But now I have friends that people that I've called my friends now that I can call and be like, I know this person, what can we do? How can we do it? I'm not, what's the word? Or I can't help them, but I can at least reach out to somebody who can try and get them the help. I attend a GRASP meeting, which is grief recovery after substance passing. We had our support group meeting on Wednesday, and we've had somebody attend, and they're struggling, and it's like I'm not good with helping somebody who's struggling. I'm good with the grief part. So I feel now where I am in life, I can help. I can pass them their information on to somebody that can help them.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel that because, I've struggled with grief myself, and I know how that process was for me. I knew how I could cope and deal with it and process. But for me, the hard part is helping another person a little bit deal with the grief.
Yeah. See, for me, that's where I think I'm better.
Yeah.
Equipped to handle that. There's no right and wrong way to grieve. And that's when, I've learned a lot about that. And like I said, the passing of Adam was just different. We lost our dad in 2018, but I was upset. I cried. I miss him, but it was different with a sibling, and I'm sure it's different losing a child. Looking at my mom, who's lost a child, whether it's a little child or an adult child, doesn't matter. You're still losing a child, which is a grief I hope I never experience. But it's a different kind of grief from losing a parent.
Yeah.
Can't explain it, but I feel like I can help, especially siblings, try and navigate that. And that's the whole reason why I started Adam's Light. I think that was my outlet to help with my grief, to help me cope with my grief. So we help men who are in recovery. We want to provide them with basic necessity items. So we just started our Adam Packs of Promise, which finally we launched this year, because it takes time to have fundraisers and to be able to get money to be able to do ththings. We have such a humongous community and family support. We did an Amazon wish list, and last night we were finally able to call it a launch of our Adam Packs. But we went to a recovery house and we handed out 30 Adam Packs. And in these packs are hygiene items that a lot of us might take for granted: toothbrush, toothpaste, a comb, body wash. There was journals, a water bottle, a clean scrubby. We gave them all a nice bath towel. I'm trying to think what else was in there. There was a lot of stuff. And there's a poncho. Some of them don't drive. If they have to go somewhere, they have a poncho. What else was in there? Chapstick. Things that we might take for granted.
Yeah.
So we were able to deliver them last night, and I'm so excited. I have 9 more to deliver tomorrow, and then some to deliver on Christmas Eve. So that's what we do. We want to give to these guys things that, Adam had all that. He had a roof over his head. He had, food on his plate. He had, new clothes. He had, socks. That's another thing. We give him socks. A lot of these guys, when they come into recovery, they don't have anything. They don't have a family support. So that's where we wanted to focus our nonprofit on, is giving back. And I know it might not be a lot to somebody, but to somebody who doesn't have anything, 2 new pairs of socks can be.
No, I love getting socks. Initially, when you said what you would do different today, or the advice that you would give somebody else, it was they have to be ready.
They have to be ready. If they're not ready, they've got to want to get help. And if they want to get help, I have resources now. I have people that I can put them in contact with to help them get the help that they need. And I think we're not there as a society, but I feel like we're getting there. Now, there are some places that aren't good. There are some places that...
Like treatment centers?
Yes.
Yeah, that's another thing. For example, when you were talking about the state-run facilities, they're usually not the best, but people can still find recovery in those places, and it can be their start.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what treatment is you're beginning to.
And I think then once they get into the treatment center, and again, this is something that I've learned doing this, because I never understood there's 3.1, different levels. So I'm still learning all of that myself. That, when you go to a detox for 7 days, what happened? Where do you go after that? Well, then do you go to
residential?
A residential for 30 days. Okay, well, you're not cure in 30 days. Where do you go after that? Well, then you go to a sober living house where you are giving the structure. But if the people running that do not have the structure in place, then they're not going to succeed. And I will tell you, the one that we deal with, they are amazing. You know, and that's where we went to their Christmas party last night. They are amazing. And there are some people who don't make it, you know, who do relapse. But the guys that I have met and the women that I have met who have, you're talking 12, 13, 14 years clean. It's amazing to see them giving back. So that's where I feel like if somebody comes to me, you know, my sister or my brother or my cousin is in addiction, but they want help, I'm like, okay, I can't help you, but I can get you in touch with somebody who can.
Yeah. So you're like that network.
Yes. Yes. Oh, it's completely network. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect word for it. Yes.
Going to detox, having that detox period, then going to residential, and like having those groups and like just amazing facilitators and getting therapy for the first time in treatment was a game changer for me. And I just feel like I got really lucky with where I was placed, and I got placed like with the right people and met the right people.
And that's part of the whole mental health thing.
Yeah.
Like addiction and mental health, it's
the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we never realized that, you know, it wasn't until after Adam passed that we could pinpoint specific moments that, you know, where he really struggled with his mental health. And to us, it was just drugs, addiction. We never thought about that mental health. Mm-hmm. But they are one and the same. And I also think too, is that the chemicals and the drugs changed him. And I think, because he had just lost his job. So right before he died, or he overdosed, and he had gotten a new boss who came down on him for a thing, and he couldn't cope with it. So he ended up getting fired because he did not have the coping mechanisms. And that's essentially what
you could get in therapy and learn.
You know, these guys that I've met and the women that I've met, it's the rest of their lives. Like I heard a couple of them talking last night. Somebody had relapsed after like 20 some years because they stopped going to meetings. So the meetings, like you have to continue going to the meetings. You have to continue with that support for the rest of their lives. And I've learned that from the guys and the girls that I've talked to that are in recovery. You can never stop going to those meetings.
And sometimes people do get clean and sober time without ever like going to an AA meeting, but eventually, like, I think they like notice that they're lacking something in their lives mentally. They're just not fulfilled,
right? Like
discontent, irritable, and they either relapsed or like find a program in a community of like recovery people.
It's like I was having a conversation with somebody. I say, we're all addicted to something. I'm addicted to my coffee. Like, if I don't have my coffee in the morning. We all have a thing. Like, we all have our thing. And the other thing I find myself addicted to is the gym.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and my gym, that's my support. That's my community. So I may not, you know, I'm not in recovery where I have to go to, you know, an NA or an AA meeting, but I need to go to the gym every night for my sanity. Mm-hmm. You know, that's my addiction. So we do. You need that network of people that are like-minded like you and that understand you. You know, where, you know, sometimes my family doesn't understand my gym, you know, why I have to go to the gym, but the people at the gym, the girls I go with, they understand it. They get it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's the same thing of, you know, people who are in recovery. You know, people who, like me, I try to understand it, but I can't sit down and completely know what somebody's going through. They need to be with other people who have experienced and lived that.
You have compassion for it and sympathy, but you'll never know what it's really like
to
be struggling with addiction. What's kind of your understanding of addiction? And like, how would you explain it to, say, like somebody walks up to you and like, hey, I have a family member struggling with addiction. I don't understand it. Why can't he just stop? Like, how would you break it down to them?
I would try and I simplify it with my coffee addiction. I mean, really, like, what do you drink tea? Do you drink coffee? Do you eat chocolate?
It's like a comfort thing.
Yes, I think we all have that, you know, and I think it's just trying to rationalize, you know, yes, you're not harming yourself with tea or coffee or going to the gym. where they're harming themselves with an addiction. But it's a chemical, and I'll never forget the day. This is another core memory, when I went to see Adam in jail, and I remember him pulling up his sleeves and looking at the track marks on his arms, and I'm like, and I asked him, like, does that hurt? And he said no, and I'm like, will they go away? He's like, I don't know. And I said, what made you, like, tell me why, how does it happen? He said, you're always looking for that next high. So the first time that he did heroin, he said it was the most amazing feeling, but he never got that high again. So he was always looking for that feeling again. And then that's how you think, okay, well, maybe I need to take a little bit more. So you would, start taking more and more and more. And that's how he explained it to me, how he got addicted.
And he never went to 12-step? That's exactly how they explain it sometimes.
Yeah, unless he got that when he was in, I don't know if they did anything while he was in jail, like, but yeah,
yeah, that's how most people break it down. They always want to chase that, like, first high or first drunk feeling that they can't replicate.
Yeah, and that's what he said, that he just needed that. And that's why, when he did come home, he wasn't doing hair anymore, but he was smoking pot. I'd be like, Mom, I'm smoking.
Yeah.
So and that's a whole nother topic of conversation, whether or not it's legal now in the state.
Yeah.
So,
That's all. Yeah, that is a whole nother conversation and topic, because, like how you kind of saw it, some people were like, it's better than heroin. So, like, let us be okay with him doing that. But
and you still have to be careful, and then I would say to Adam, like, where are you getting it from? Because, I'm in a couple different groups on Facebook of fentanyl, and fentanyl is now laced in weed. So
it's crazy.
You have to be careful. But now you have dispensaries, but it's still, I'm 51. It's not like it was when I was, when I used to, smoke it every now and again, just for recreational purposes. It's a lot different now than it was back then.
Yeah, this was a thought that just came in my head as you were talking. What are your opinions and thoughts on fentanyl testing, like fentanyl test strips?
I wish Adam would have had them.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes there's and I don't know the percentage, they don't always work.
Yeah, I think
and I think they're progressing, but when they first came out with them, that wasn't 100% sure thing accurate that they were going to work. But I think they've progressed now. Would I have loved for him to have them? Yeah, I would.
Yeah, you would have preferred.
I would have preferred him. It's funny that we're talking about this now, and I was just talking about this with somebody last night about harm reduction. I'm not completely sold on harm reduction.
Why?
Not saying that it's a good thing. I don't know. I feel I struggle with this, which is one of the reasons why when I knew we were going to talk nonprofit, I didn't want anything to do with harm reduction. There's other nonprofits out there that do that, that do it well.
Yeah,
I'm not going to try and get into something that I know nothing about. I'm compassionate. I can help, or try and listen to people who are in recovery and give them towels and toothpaste and toothbrushes. When it comes to clean needles, and I just don't know if I'm sold on that. I get it while we're doing it, and I know the statistics. I've seen the statistics that, deaths have come down, because they're testing their their heroin, they're testing, or the Narcan, they're, overdosing, but then we're bringing them back with Narcan. I don't know. I can't.
It's something about it just doesn't sit right with you. I can't put my finger
on it. I think it's the mental health aspect of it. I'm like, okay, so you're going to go into a homeless camp and give, people living on the street clean needles and all this stuff. But then what?
Yeah. Something feels like I should be doing something else.
And if they don't want the help, I feel like you're just, and I'm not saying it's wrong, because that's somebody's mother, sister, brother, cousin, father, uncle.
It's literally,
and you're saving their life.
Yeah.
Like I said, I can't put my finger on it. I'm not against it, but I just don't.
You just want to, like, pick them up and put them in a safe place and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no, what are you doing? Don't do it.
I know what you mean, but it's. I definitely see your perspective.
Right. Being somebody who's never been addicted, I don't understand that. And a lot of the one foundation that I know of that does harm reduction, they're in recovery. So they get it. They understand that. I've never been in recovery. So I think that's where I struggle with it.
100%.
Yeah. Not like I disagree with it and don't, and what's the next step?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm giving you a clean needle. Let's get you some help.
Yeah.
But then they don't want to go for help. Well, then we're just going to keep giving you needles? Like,
Essentially, you're just meeting them where they're at.
yes.
You know what I mean? And then like when they're ready, because that's what I kind of want FTS to do.
Yeah.
Is like, here, we'll hook you up with some naloxone because it's useful for everybody to have it.
Right.
And I will hand out fentanyl test strips. But at the same time, like, let me know if you're ready and I can get you connected with somebody. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I don't want to be like pushing sobriety and recovery on people.
Because there's some that don't want it.
Exactly. And I'm not going to tell you what to do with yourself, but I will share I will share my experience with you.
And I think, and like I said, that's why there are, nonprofits that do that.
Yeah.
That be your wheelhouse, and I will support you and do what I can. That's just not where my heart was, and my heart was more being one-on-one with those that are trying. I feel like Adam never got the opportunity to recover and stay. So I want to give back. We want to give back. My family wants to give back to those that are beating this addiction and in recovery and helping others. So that's where we feel our wheelhouse is, and then we support, a couple of nonprofits I deal with, we support each other back and forth. We have different, ways of how we're helping and that works for me.
And I wanted to ask you about the grieving process because we touched on that a little bit, but how was that for you? And did you seek help in any way?
Well, I did my GRASP group.
Okay.
So that's the grief recovery after substance passing. And I contacted them right away and went to my first meeting. Adam died in September. I went to my first meeting in November. And the Josh, who runs it, is now a really good friend of mine. And we do a lot together. He helps me tremendously. He has taught me a lot when it comes to, because he works out. He lost his brother. So he does a lot with trying to help people. He works at a Suboxone clinic and helping people, get on that, stay on that. And he's worked at the local hospital, helping people. And so he really has a feel or what's the word? He's done this for many years. So I'm able to learn from him how to do that. So my grieving, and I look at our family, all of us grieve so differently. Like everybody grieves differently. I was very vocal, especially on social media. My brother died from a heroin overdose. This is what can happen. I'm not embarrassed by it. Like I was not, I wanted to get talk about it.
Yeah.
And I still want to talk about it. And sometimes I feel like when I'm talking about Adam, people are like, oh, good Lord, here she goes.
Yeah.
But I like talking about him. I want people to know that they're not alone. Everybody knows somebody now. I feel like when you talk to somebody, oh yeah, my sister, my brother, my cousin, my aunt's uncle, nephew, everybody knows somebody who is struggling or has struggled or has passed. My mom, it broke her heart. Like she'll never recover. Like she'll have a broken heart forever. I always think of, there was a picture I remember seeing of a shattered heart. And then the next picture was the heart was together, but you could see all the cracks. So I kind of, if that makes sense, like my heart shattered. My heart broke with my dad. My heart shattered with Adam. I'm slowly putting the heart back together, but it's never going to be whole. And I cry. I still cry. I mean, it was 3 years in September. And they say the first year you're in shock. The second year, okay, you're learning. The third year is the worst.
Really?
Yes. The third year was the worst. We're in year 4 and it's not any better. But you don't move on, you move forward. So we continue to move forward. We'll never move on from losing him. But we continue to move forward. And it helps. We have his journals. He kept really good journals. I found his journals about maybe 1 or 2 weeks. We were going through his room, and I found his journals. And reading them has really given me his perspective on things and where he was at moments in time. And they're amazing. I would love to publish them one day because he was a very spiritual person. Not that, he went to church or, God, Jesus, but he read the Bible. He studied, Judaism. He studied Buddhism. He studied Wiccan.
He's interested in.
Yes, he was very interested. He was really getting into meditation too. He had a little altar in his room, and he swore that he was going to be able to speak out to the other side.
Yeah.
Like he wanted to meditate and talk to the other side. And he felt that where we are now, Earth is just a middle ground. Like he's where he wanted to be, and I firmly believe that wherever he is, it's much better than what we're living.
Yeah.
And that helps.
Yeah.
That helps. But his journals helped. And I now, I read his journals on his birthday, on the day that he passed. And then on August 31st, which is International Overdose Awareness Day, I read his journals. And then some of them I have memorized because I've read so much. But I love hearing him talk about our dad, and like when we didn't talk to our father for many years, like 13 years. And when we reconnected with him, he talks about, my dad, and I love reading that. He talks about my mom. He calls them the rents. I had never heard that term.
The rent?
The rents. So the parents. So R-E-N-T-S. Yeah, I had never. So he would always talk about the rents in his journals, and my mom and I just laughed.
I was like, wait, did they charge him rent?
Yeah, no. I'm like, you guys are referred to as the rents. Because I remember reading, I'm like, who is that? Like, what is he talking about? And then I realized he was talking about my parents. Yeah, so his leaving his journals was a huge gift. Huge gift for us to really understand, where he was, what he was going through. And I feel like I got to know him better. Like I wish I would have had these conversations with him and not having to read them, And I remember some people saying, oh my God, you read his journals? I'm like, I know my husband said, oh, you should have gotten rid of them. I can't believe you're reading them. I'm like, I feel like it was a gift. And then other people say, oh no, it was the best thing that he could have left you.
There's a lot of lessons I feel like we learn when people pass that we probably wouldn't have learned otherwise. Because I learned quite a few lessons when my best friend passed away. I feel like I wouldn't have been able to like grasp that idea or really feel that. Maybe I could have like logically learned it,
right?
But like I emotionally like feel these lessons, and then I can't unlearn them now, if that makes sense. Like I will do my very best in life, like to not have bad blood with people, to forgive, to always reach out. Even when I'm hesitant,
Yes.
and I'm like, oh, I want to reach out to that person.
Yes.
I'm procrastinating a little bit.
Yes.
I'm never going to do that again.
I can be a little bitchy sometimes. And people who know me, I'm just a very Abe-type personality. I like things my way, done the way that I want to do them. And I'm very aggressive. I'm very competitive. And that's just the nature I am. I don't know if it's being the oldest child or that's just how I am. But I have found myself really trying to be more patient with people. So I think maybe that would be a huge lesson, is the patience that I have with people that I may not necessarily like or can't really tolerate, but I try to have the patience with them, or I just walk away, But I think that my patience, and it's still a work in progress.
Yeah,
it will always be a work in progress. That's one of the lessons. And doing the work that we do takes a lot of patience, kindness, remembering that people, you don't know what they're dealing with. So the car that flipped you off because they cut you off, well, maybe somebody had a heart attack and they're trying to get to the hospital. You just never know what people are going through.
I saw this picture on Facebook, and it was just like of the highways of people like sitting in traffic. And like it had text over each car of like what the person could have been like going through, or like what they're on the way to.
Yep.
And when there's a word for this. Saunder's the word.
Huh.
Of like everybody's life is just as complex as yours, but we forget it.
Yes.
We forget about
and
it.
So that's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned, that everybody is going through something. Everybody has their demons. Everybody has, whatever you're going through. For example, so there was my car. I've been having issues with my car. We talked about the cars, and trying to think, it was something. And I was like, I know that there's somebody out there here I am complaining about this, And there's somebody out there who's having a worse day than mine,
Yeah.
or is having, losing somebody. Or I know it was right when the hurricane happened. And I felt guilty because I'm complaining about these trivial things in my life. Meanwhile, you've got people who have lost
homes.
everything.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, then you just feel like this big for complaining.
Tumbling.
Yes. So I think all of that. I think that's all.
No, yeah, even like the person checking you out at the grocery store, or just thinking about like, wow, you're going through your own shit too.
And I'm a huge thinker.
Yeah.
Like, I have anxiety. Like, I did not sleep very well thinking about, doing this today. Like, what am I going to say? What am I going to talk about? I know what I'm going to say. I know what I'm going to talk about, but is there certain points that I want to remember to say?
Yeah.
So, I can have anxiety about, things. And
No, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And then when we're in the moment of whatever thing we were anxious about, it's never as bad as we were
I
making
just
it
want
out
everything to
to be
be perfect. Like, I strive for perfection.
For things to go a certain way.
Yes, and I've always been like that, and I'll never change that. That's always how I am. When I plan an event, like when we plan our Overdose Awareness Day event, I have who's talking, who's speaking, what music we're playing, like everything. Is heaven forbid something happens. And I'm like, stressed out, and the anxiety is horrible. That's what my husband always says. He's like, I hate it when you got an event coming up because your anxiety. I'm like, because I want it to be perfect.
No, events are anxiety inducing, especially when you're hosting.
Yes, I'm like, I don't want anything to go wrong, and I need to be prepared if something does go wrong. What's my plan B, plan C, all the way down to plan Z? I need to know. So,
is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
People knowing that they're not alone in this fight, that there is such a stigma, and I've met families, in this journey that are embarrassed because they lost a loved one to an addiction, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Like, it's not. It happens. We need to, take it head on, talk about it, which is why it's just great. I love the F the stigma. I love the whole thing. Because there's such a stigma with everything, with addiction, with mental health, and everybody's striving to be perfect, and society telling you how you're supposed to act and be, and I think everybody's going through it. It's just how you cope, how you deal with it.
Yeah, what you make of it almost.
Yeah, and we're just trying to, what life we have left here on this earth, make it, keeping Adam's legacy alive, keeping his name alive, and helping others as long as we can. And we're excited. We have a big event, hopefully, coming in September of next year. We're looking to do our first 5K as a fundraiser. Mm-hmm. So starting January, I'll start working on that, and excited about that. It's always been like a bucket list item, I guess you could say, to host a 5K. So, and let them know that we're behind them. We get you, and we want you. Adam couldn't, he didn't make it in recovery, but I want these guys to make it, and the girls we met. I keep saying guys because we primarily deal with the guys in recovery.
I think the statistic is there's more men that go to treatment. I don't know if it's more men that go to treatment or more men struggle with addiction.
Well, I think it's because, and I could be totally wrong, but it's like, people, I don't want to say expect it, but they're not surprised when it's a guy. I think they're more surprised when it's a girl. Do you see, I know what you mean. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel that people think that,
even when
it's a guy.
With a lot of things, I think people are like, oh, that must have been a guy.
Right. And I've met some wonderful women that are in recovery, and this
is a horrible example and very depressing. But like, for example, the recent school shooter, people were so surprised it was a woman because they expected it to be a guy.
Yes.
And even
perfect example, yes.
I could go down a whole list of horrible things people can do to each other, but people mainly assume it is a guy. But women can do the same thing.
Yep.
But it is a little slightly less common.
And there's I find too that there's a lot of help out there for women in recovery, which is why I'm kind of glad that we can do. Although we don't have a problem helping women, obviously, but I just find that a lot of people don't give the men the help that they need. Like, I feel like people, because I don't know if it's a society thing. Oh, the poor lady, the poor girl, the poor woman, and there's a lot of nonprofits that help women only.
Yeah.
There isn't that many that help, just the men. So, like I said, I have friends now, guys that were in the program that are now, in recovery, that are now paying it forward and helping other people that I call my friends. And I saw, a couple of them last night. So I've grown in that aspect to know that they're people too. They're just like my brother was. And I wouldn't want somebody to treat my brother like that. So I remember I want to treat them with they were never wanting to hurt anybody but themselves, and that's the thing. Adam would never hurt anybody. He just wanted to hurt himself, and I always try to remember that with people in recovery. Like if my brother was still here and he had a girlfriend, how would her family feel about them? Well, I would hope that they would treat him, with the respect and, because everybody's somebody to somebody. Even that homeless person on the street is somebody's daughter, son, mother, brother, cousin. So empathy. I think the world needs more empathy.
Very true. Well, I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing your experience, and thank you for Adam's Light.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, this was wonderful. Thank you.